Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 182 of Radio 815, the podcast dedicated to examining the works of writer, director, producer J.J. Abrams and his extended Bad Robot universe. I'm Matt Crandall, here with Marcelo Inostroza, as we continue to watch Apple TV Plus's J.J. Abrams produced David E. Kelley legal thriller based on the Scott Turow novel and Harrison Ford film from the 90s, Presumed Innocent. We are talking today about episode 4, The Burden, which of course is the burden of proof, and we pick up exactly where we left off. So every time this show ends, we basically pick up right where we left off, and Rusty had found out that his son Kyle had ridden his bike past Carolyn's house, and the cops had photos of this, which of course is not a good look. And so the episode does start where Rusty and Barbara go in to speak to Kyle, and of course his first instinct is deny, 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 and Rusty blows up, and Barbara's like, get the fuck out of here, let me talk to our kid. Marcelo, Rusty is not going to win any Parent of the Year awards so far from what we've seen.
This scene really brought it home to me in that it's quite possible that Rusty could have blacked out and committed this murder against Carolyn. Because the one thing that I've hanged my hat on with him as a character is I'm like, he's a good guy. And their relationship, although very hot and heavy, was very physical and very primal. But he never came off to me as someone who would lose his mind in the process of snapping. And this scene with him talking to his son, questioning him about why he was there, was the first time that I go, wait a minute. Maybe all those flashes that we've seen of Rusty thinking about that night with Carolyn, maybe what he's seeing isn't a false sense of reality. Maybe what he's seeing actually happened. And if it actually happened, how the fuck is he going to be able to get out of this? Because one thing that is brought up in this episode multiple times is that we cannot put Rusty on the stand. If we put Rusty on the stand, we're fucked. So the way that David E. Kelley and his co-writer constructed that first scene worked on multiple levels for me, but the level that I felt that it really hit home for me on was actually planting that seed of doubt even further in my brain. Did he actually black out and do this fucking thing?
Yeah, this episode really starts to paint Rusty with a different kind of brush. And even other people let Rusty know that they have some doubts about how he's been acting. There's a part where he calls himself the fuck up in chief in front of Raymond, and I thought that was really funny. But him and Barbara have this tension, and she doesn't like the way he's addressing the son. He doesn't like that the son lied to him, and they do say, we got to get him in therapy. And of course, he goes to the same fucking therapist that the whole family goes to, which is wild. Like, I don't think everyone in your family should see the same friggin' therapist. So, like, that was kind of crazy. But Rusty himself, as this episode progresses, there's a moment where him and Raymond are having a talk, and he said, look, if Barbara was going to leave you, she'd have already done it, because what do you think she was waiting for? A good excuse? Like, she already has the excuse. You're on trial for murder. And he says, so obviously she loves you, but I think that you yourself have doubts about your shame, your guilt. And he gives this monologue about, first he does say, what are you worried? We're going to get you a diagnosis and it's going to come back pig because you're just a sexist pig who was out fucking like all this stuff. But he says shame and guilt are two different things. And shame is how you feel about yourself because of something you have done. And guilt is what you feel because of everyone else being affected by the consequences of your actions. And Raymond says to him, I don't doubt that you feel shame, but you have not shown me, like this is the subtext, you have not shown me an ounce of you feeling guilty about how your actions with your affair and all this has fucked up everything for everyone else. Because Rusty is coming off quite selfish in a lot of this where, yes, he is fighting for his life, but the guilt, even if it's not guilt for the murder, but the guilt for everything else and the way the dominoes have fallen because of his horrible actions, we haven't really seen him wrestle with that much. Now, maybe some of those flashes that we are seeing, as you said, could be what really happened, or maybe it is him realizing his guilt and complicity in the way that these dominoes have fallen. But then there's a kind of ugly moment where he is telling us about when Carolyn kissed him that night. And he said she did it because she knew it would give me hope and it would fuck with my mind and it would make me, crazy because she didn't want to be in a relationship anymore. And he was stalking her and just messaging and messaging, because they talk about the night where he just sent text after text after text. And when he got a response, he went right over there instead of working on the case he was supposed to be working on. And the fact that he's almost victim blaming, where he's like, when she gave me that kiss, she knew it would mess with me. I'm starting to be like, dude, we're hoping you didn't do it, but you are not giving us a lot to go on here, because everything you're doing is fucking bad.
The one thing that Rusty has never done, he's never taken accountability for his actions. And he's never once, like Matt said, shown that he is actually remorseful for all the shit that he's causing, with the people who live in his fucking orbit. And I love various scenes in this series so far. I love the moment in the pilot. It's towards the end of the pilot when Rusty is put against the wall, and he's actually intimated to be the person of interest in Carolyn's murder. But that scene when he's trying to basically say to his lawyer that he's a good man, that his wife has some accountability, that fucking pissed me off, because I'm like, motherfucker, you're saying that she's at fault too? You're the fucking guy who stick this dick in your second chair. In what world is your wife responsible for your fucking actions? That is inexcusable. As a matter of fact, there's this whole subplot in this episode where Rusty's wife meets this bartender, and I'm like, you know what? The best thing that you can do right now, the best thing that you can do is for you to go screw this bartender. Because that would make you feel better, and that would validate your self-worth as a fucking woman. Who gives a shit about Rusty? So one thing that this episode did for me is that it really made me angry. It really made me feel actual vitriol for the character of Rusty, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and his performance is still magnetic. I feel he is probably one of the best characters in this fucking series, other than Carolyn. And and we've seen her in flashbacks all the time, which is like, God damn it! I wish I would have seen you when you were alive, because in flashbacks you're fucking entertaining. Well, this show is absolutely magnetic because of the performances and the writing. But I really think that for Rusty to even think about possibly getting away with this, I mean, getting away with this, I don't even know what that looks like now. But for him to get some sense of peace, he's going to have to take some fucking accountability. And to your point, the fact that his entire family seeing the same fucking shrink, that's bullshit. That is absolute bullshit. And I think, and I was really hoping that David E. Kelley and his co-writers were not going to fall into that trap, but they did. And I'm like, what?
Right. And I think, Rusty holding himself accountable, and he just has a bit of a narrow view of the world, as we're finding out. And I think one of the most powerful scenes is when him and Barbara have their talk after she has talked to the son in the garage. And she is like, we got to scrub this dude's bike. We got to make sure there is nothing that can go wrong. And Rusty's like, you're overreacting. And she has a great line where she says, sometimes I think you forget our son is black and we live in America, right? And this is something that Rusty, again, is not seeing like the whole broad scope of things because she's worried that the cops are going to see a black kid driving by his father's mistress's house and somehow tie him to it because that would just be easy and nobody's going to question if they throw another black kid in jail or whatever, right? And Rusty, that doesn't enter his mind, but it should, because he's usually the guy who would be on the other end of this, throwing those people in jail and throwing away the key. So it's like bizarre. The way that he's acting is so frustrating, but it is believable because of the situation he is in and the pressure he is under. And as you said, Barbara is very interesting. And when she goes to the bar, she finally gets to be like her old self. She's trying to compartmentalize all the shit and just have a good time with this flirty guy. But she is not willing to cross the line. And so she gets all horned up with this bartender. And it seems like one thing's going to lead to another. And we cut to a hot and heavy sex scene. But then we realize it's her and Rusty, because she is not willing to cross the lines that Rusty fucking crossed long ago, where she's stepping out emotionally. But then when it comes for the physical gratification, she goes back to her marriage. So like, you know, the bartender had done all the work to get that engine ready, and then Rusty reaped the rewards. But I like that Barbara doesn't let him off the hook, because after they have their tryst, she wants to know, is that the kind of sex you had with Carolyn? Is that what it was like? And, you know, Rusty is kind of twisting in the wind here, where he's like, what does he say to his wife? And he's got to downplay some elements of it. But I appreciate that she is so strong that she's not afraid to go there. Like, some people might never bring that up with their partner because they don't want to know the answer. But she's like, you know what? This guy owes me some explanations here. And she goes for it.
One of the best things about this show is it's rough, it's tough, it takes no apologies, and it's unapologetic. But one of the things that really sing to me as like like a bad robot kind of veneer on the show, if that's possible with the David E. Kelly show. But it's the quiet moments in between characters when they're not yelling, when they're not when they're not saying fuck every 15 seconds, right? I really think that this is an opportunity for Rusty to not only take accountability for his affair with Carolyn, but also one of Rusty's biggest problems is that he is self-righteous. And self-righteous people at the end of the day can say that they're all about X, Y, Z, whatever letter you want in the alphabet. But they only care about one thing and one thing only, them fucking selves. And Rusty has to get, he has to do that mental change in his self before trial begins, because there are several instances in this episode where people who fucking hate this guy but are helping him throughout the goodness of their heart, you try and help him, and he doesn't take help. Like he's so desperate to fix the fucking situation that he hasn't slowed down yet. And I am really wondering if that's going to happen, or is he just going to run into this problem like a fucking train and just pretend that his bad behavior is explainable because of XYZ. My fucking wife made me do it. Are we actually going to see a character arc of Rusty understanding that his behavior towards Carolyn, after she constantly told him to fuck off, wasn't her fault? Wasn't the proper thing to do. She should have fucking fucked off.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they play that out now that we know like a little bit more of what happened on the night that things went bad. So I'm interested in that. And of course, we get a little bit more information by the end of this episode about some DNA evidence that might be damning for Rusty. But earlier in the episode, we see Tommy Malto talking with the medical examiner and doing like rehearsal for putting the medical examiner on the stand. And I love that the medical examiner is like, I ain't got time for this shit. Like, I'm a medical professional. I demand respect, and you don't have to treat me like a child. And Tommy Malta's like, look, as a medical doctor, I respect you. But as a witness, you've been known to shit the bed, and I am not going to allow that to happen when we're doing a trial against Rusty fucking Savage. So I like that we see Tommy really going after it. And what is interesting is that there is a scene about midway through the episode where there's a talk with Carolyn's son again to find out like what's going on. And he says, she was always telling me there was someone at work that like was harassing her that she didn't like. Well, did she ever tell you who it was? No. But like it must have been Rusty. It must have been this guy. And I'm starting to wonder, was it Tommy? Is there more to this? Are we going to find out that Tommy is so gung-ho for this Rusty case because he had a crush on Carolyn and he was jealous of Rusty and Carolyn being together, and Carolyn's son Michael might have actually gotten some information from his mom, but not the full picture. And I'm interested to see how that plays out. Raymond has a talk with Malto and De La Guardia where he says, you guys are never going to prove that Rusty did the murder. There's too much circumstantial evidence. You're never going to prove it. So let's just plead out on the obstruction case, give the guy 3 years and like, let's pack it in. And they're acting kind of smug and they're like, oh, well, here's our ace in the hole. And Raymond's pissed that he didn't get this file earlier. And they hand it to him, and we find out that under Carolyn's nails is Rusty's skin. Now, Rusty's like, that can't be. And he's trying to think, like, did she scratch him when they were maybe making out? And obviously the defense would like that to be the case. The prosecution is going to say, no, it's a wound from when you tried to murder her. How do you feel? This is like positioned as part of a bombshell. It's not the cliffhanger ending of the episode, but it's just before where this information comes out and Rusty gets the call. Is this a red herring or is this like super bad news?
I think it's a red herring, but the reason that I'm saying it's a red herring is because I really like your theory of when Tommy, are you impressed, guys? For fucking 3 episodes I didn't remember his fucking name, but now I got it. When Tommy questioned Carolyn's son, it's highly possible that the person that Carolyn was talking about to his son wasn't Rusty. It's actually Tommy. It would make sense because throughout this whole episode, throughout the whole first 2 episodes, Tommy has been so fucking gung-ho, to use Matt's wording, to hang Rusty Savage out from a fucking pole. But here's one thing that he hasn't had. He doesn't have actual evidence to build his case upon. What he's building his case upon right now is a house full of mud. This is the only thing that he's ever gotten that can actually fucking bury Rusty. That's it. One fucking thing. One thing out of his whole bluster and oh my god, I'm fine. And De La Guardia, as much as I fucking hate him because he's a politician through and through, but I really like how throughout the entire episode he was questioning Tommy. He goes, "Are you up for this? Because right now, I don't think you are." I mean, there's even a moment when they're walking down the stairs and they're talking about this meeting with Raymond, and LaGuardia says, I don't know why Raymond wants this meeting, but I gather he wants this meeting because he knows that he has your balls in a vice. Does he have your balls in a vice? And just that look that Tommy gives, I'm like, that motherfucker did it. So, and furthermore, there's a really small moment when Tommy is given the evidence by the medical examiner who says he's a fucking professional. He looks at the evidence, he walks into the elevator, and then they cut to the meeting with Raymond. So I'm like, what did that report really say? Did it say that Rusty's skin cells were under Carolyn's nails, or did he falsify it? So the whole Rusty thread for this episode was fascinating because I went to thinking that motherfucker was a little weasel to going, that motherfucker is a little weasel, and that motherfucker is possibly capable of convicting a fucked up man of something that he didn't do.
Yeah, we'll have to see And of course, Tommy being so outraged that he thought Rusty was committing obstruction of justice. It would be interesting if it was Tommy actually obstructing justice by pulling the strings to make sure Rusty looked guilty. Rusty obviously continues to still not do himself any favors. The other plot line that we haven't really touched on that is important to the end of the episode is that Rusty's detective friend, who has already been told, don't stick your neck out for Rusty Savage or it might fuck up your whole career. She finds out that the Bunny Davis murder from years ago, that Rusty and Carolyn convicted that guy and put him in jail. There was the second semen sample that Carolyn buried. So there was someone else at the scene of the crime when Bunny Davis was murdered. And they want to dig into this because Carolyn was murdered in a similar way. And if they can prove that maybe there was someone from that first murder years ago still on the loose, maybe they killed Carolyn because they wanted some sort of vengeance or vendetta because Carolyn was prosecuting their case. She says, there was no hits in the system on that DNA. But what I did was I ran it through 23andMe and we got a hit. So we got this guy who was at the Bunny Davis murder site spraying his seed all over the place a couple of years ago. Let's go talk to him. And she says, I'll bring you along, Rusty. Just don't step out of line. And I'm like, why the fuck is she bringing Rusty? Rusty, of course, is going to step out of line. And so they show up at this guy's house. His wife with a brand new baby answers the door. He comes up and they tell him sort of why they're there. They say they're investigating the scene of a crime from a few years ago in a different neighborhood. And then they kind of let him know, like, well, it's actually about the death of a sex worker. And the guy clearly like clues into why they're there. And he's like, get the fuck out. Get the fuck out of here. I'm not talking to you guys. This is not above board, which of course, if you had left your DNA at the site of a murder of a sex worker and your wife is standing right there, you're probably going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Please leave. And as this is happening, the guy looks at Rusty and he says, do I know you from somewhere? And when Rusty is rude to him, he's like, get the fuck out. But that's not the end of it, because the episode ends where Rusty is at home and someone is going crazy on his door, screaming, banging. And of course, it's this fucking guy who might be a murderer. And what are you thinking when this dude shows up at Rusty's house? Rusty's family is obviously upset, but Rusty poked this bear for no reason. And he really should have just let his detective friend find out if there was anything to this rather than showing up with the most recognizable face in Chicago at the moment and letting this guy know that he thought he murdered this sex worker.
Rusty going to actually interview this piece of meat that he handed his detective friend made me fucking crazy, because I'm like, what the fuck are you doing there? First of all, if Tommy or if that motherfucker LaGuardia finds out that you were actually present during this guy's questioning, God forbid if he ever gets on the witness list, then you're But what are you doing? What the hell are you doing? If you wanted to throw your detective friend a bone, you could have done that. But like Matt said, he didn't have to fucking be there. Every time that Rusty puts his faith in the friends who still want to fucking talk to him, he fucking throws it in there. He fucking fucks it up, and he fucking shows them that he is not ready for trial. And trial is fucking approaching. Why is fucking trial approaching? Because Rusty and Raymond asked for this thing to go fucking quickly. I, for one, thought it was a good idea for this thing to go for this trial to start fucking quickly. But after this episode, I'm actually wondering if that was a fucking good idea, because this episode shows me that under pressure, the best fucking prosecutor in this show is gonna fucking fold like a chair. He does not do good under pressure. And that is very odd for someone who is painted as such a good attorney. The switch that David E. Kelly and his writers gave the character of Rusty for this interpretation of this property was absolutely fantastic. But to move to the end of the episode now. The end of this episode was fantastic because when I was watching it, folks, right before Rusty actually goes to the front door of his house, somebody actually ran the actual door of my house at the same time. So when Rusty got a ring at the doorbell, I got the ring at the doorbell, guys. I almost left out of my fucking chair.
As I say, as long as you didn't answer the door and beat the shit out of the person, then I think it's okay.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. This final sequence in this episode made me actually question Rusty even more if that was actually possible. Because look, in this moment, Rusty is honestly trying to protect his family because his wife is trying to calm down his daughter, who is scared out of her goddamn mind. This piece of meat who Rusty accused earlier in the episode is trying to fucking knock on the door like he's fucking Jack Nicholson in The Shining. And when Rusty finally gets a hold of him, he beats him to a bloody pulp, and that's where the episode ends. So this episode was fantastic to me, but this episode did two things. Number one, it showed me that Rusty is not ready for this. And number two, it also showed me that Tommy is one fucking slippery son of a bitch. And I would not put it past him if he tries to have the balls to pin a murder on a mentally unstable pig of a man. Like it's absolutely crazy how David E. Kelley and his writers' room are weaving this story. It's absolutely amazing because every episode ends, and I just want to click play on the next one.
Yeah, and that's how this was designed for, streaming with the binge watch and the great cliffhanger endings. And I think it's so frustrating that you're just like, Rusty, you have to know that beating the shit out of a guy who is at your front door is not going to make anyone think that you are innocent of murder. And so he keeps fumbling the ball and it's all own goals. And I'm like, dude, just relax and let your legal team do their thing. Stop getting so involved. Like, I know he's fighting for his life here, but literally at this point, if he gets convicted and he's not guilty, it really feels like it's because of his own meddling and his own shortcomings as a person that's going to happen. So it'll be interesting to see as we go forward where David E. Kelley is going to take it, because, we're about halfway through the season at this point, and there are so many people who could be suspects, and there are so many ways that this could go that, I'm not willing to say for sure who might have done it, but we still have, at every turn, Rusty makes himself look more guilty and more guilty, and I just think that's not the way you get off from a murder conviction. But we will have to see as we continue to watch this show. Next week, we will be talking about the 5th episode entitled Pre-Game. So if you are watching along with us, that is the homework. If you guys have gotten this far, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. Like, follow, subscribe, share anywhere you find podcasts or on YouTube. We've got the episodes there you can listen to. Tell a friend, leave a comment, Discord, Facebook, whatever, anything. Just let us know if anybody is out there listening. It would be appreciated. If you want to log some movies with me, I am on Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/MDC3000. Marcelo is open to more interactions. He can be found online. Marcelo, tell the people where to hit you up.
Yeah, if you want to talk to me about anything Bad Robot, you can just anything about Bad Robot except this show, you can just reach me on X or Twitter. I'm at CreekFanatic88.
All right, so that'll do it. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, Radio 815, over and out.
Radio 815 is a Balloonhead Productions presentation in association with Killer Newt Productions.